What is going on, guys? Penzik here with Reaper Airsoft, and today we're going to disassemble a S&T MP5k. I've got to check it out inside. These things are prone to breaking up front, and this one has a little bit of a hiccup on the trigger, and it was sticking there in semi-auto and it wasn't functioning, so we're going to pull it apart. Figure we can do a video on it as well when we're doing it. So we're going to pop the front body pin out here. We're going to disconnect the wires. We'll probably redo all the shrink tube and everything else like that with it. That way it looks good once it's all back and assembled and dropping shit already. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to cut the connector shrink tubes here, just so I can pull the front wires apart and we can feed the wires out of the back of the gun here, because it's going to separate to the rear. So all I'm doing is taking my little knife, a little X-Acto knife, cutting the shrink tube, pulling it apart, exposing the metal connectors themselves. That way we can separate this, and it'll allow us to pull the wires through the body up here. So when we go to put this all back together and we're done doing whatever, all we have to do is replace the shrink tube and we're good to go there. So we should be good. Those connectors are on there nice and snug. Try one at a time. There we go. There we go. So that's your, see if it'll adjust. Probably not, but just your male, female. Like I said, we'll get all this cleaned up. Depending on how the gearbox looks, as long as the shell's not cracked, we'll go over everything in the gearbox and rebuild it. Make sure everything looks good to go. That one's on there pretty good. Next thing you're going to want to do is pop the two rear pins. So we can remove the back plate. Just push them down to expose one at the back. Pull them out. And then you can pull out that base. Last pin's right here in the body. Give it a push. You may need, my fingers are too big, so I like using a screwdriver to start it. Slip it all the way through. That's out. We're good to go. Now when you go to do this, the best way to do these is to slide back nice and slow. You don't want to break anything, you don't want to ruin anything. And let's take a look here. So upper, separate it, we can set that off to the side. Let's take a quick look at the front. They've added some reinforcements to this one. I wonder if this is the S&T. Yeah, it's the HK MP5k. So they did do some reinforcements up here. And it looks like it may have saved the gearbox because there's a start. Right here in the corner, let's see, there you go, you can focus. This is just a piece of hair. Right in the corner is where the gearboxes start to crack. And they need to be kind of radiused. And the S&T stuff is kind of low grade. It's not the highest of grades. It's not like, oh my god, I want to have it type of thing. So they tend to crack a little bit more than most. Now, next thing we're going to do is we're going to get rid of the selector switch. There's a little Phillips right through the bottom. Take a small Phillips head, unscrew it just enough. You don't need to take it all the way off. When you go to take this out, be careful, because a lot of times they use a ball bearing. Unscrew it a little bit more. They use a ball bearing and a spring. There we go. To do safe and semi. See, there's the ball bearing. Then here's the spring. I'll show you guys. There we go. You guys can see that ball bearing and spring. So you don't want to lose those. Get that taken, set aside. The pin that is sitting out right here, just push it. It'll pop the selector switch out the other side. You just got to pull. Now you're going to take a big Phillips, do the two screws on the end of the motor plate. There's one. Onto the second one. And then the motor plate itself is going to have a little disc under it. So when we pop this up, try and leave it there so you guys can see the disc. There, see, here's the disc. So the disc itself actually goes between the end of the motor housing and the motor head adjustment screw on the motor plate. That way you don't dig that screw directly into the back of the motor's shaft there. We're going to pop off the wires. I just like to take either a small screwdriver, or I'll do a pair of needle nose and just pop them up. Get underneath of it, pop it up. Doesn't take much force. Positive and negative. And then slide the motor up. Motor actually looks pretty flawless on the pinion, which is perfect. No complaints there then. Now I don't know how well this is going to pick it up. I don't know how good the lighting's coming through. I had a flashlight. I don't know where it went. Nope, not under there. I don't know what I did with my flashlight. Oh, here it is, right in front of my face. So, flashlight. Let me adjust the settings too. Strobe. Just enough. So, one screw down there. Other screw is right back there. So, two screws. Take your long Phillips. You're going to want to unscrew both of those. Take them all the way out, just so they're out of the way. You can set them aside. If you're good and you remember that they're supposed to be there, you don't have to take them all the way out. You can leave them in the plastic, but not into the gearbox itself, and you'll be good to go. Once you got the screws loose, you're going to grab the gearbox and the plastic body, and you can start separating. If it's not separating for you guys, take the screws out. It'll make it easier. There we go. There's the other screw. And then there's going to be a disc. Comes right through the side here. If you're holding a gun, it's going to be on the left-hand side of the body, right where the trades are. It says HK MP5k. This disc basically goes in, and it is the actual piece. Let me see if I can get it set back in there. Is the actual piece that rotates from the selector side and translates over to the selector switch. It will sit right there. So when it rotates, it moves your selector switch forward, backwards, so you can actually adjust. So there's our pistol grip screws, metal bushings. Got an AK slide top for a version 3-esque. They realized there wasn't enough space there for the full top of the version 2. Like I said, right now what I'm doing is I'm just kind of looking over the front end here to see if it's even going to be worthwhile, and it looks like we should be good to go. A good way to test to see if you're really cracked, because a lot of the cracks can be really small, is take a torch or a lighter real quick and just hit right up front there. And what this tends to do is it tends to start bringing out the oil. As if there's a crack there, it will start focusing right where the crack is. And there looks like there's one right on this side. I'm going to see if I can get you guys to see this. Let it focus. There we go. So you're going to hit the torch right here. And I don't know how well the camera's going to pick this up. See if it adjusts. But there's a little bit of a grease line coming through. Coming from the very top here at an angle down. So we're going to have to look at that pretty good when we take this apart, or else we're going to have an issue if we don't. And everything feels a little rough in here. I don't know what really happened, or like I said, the trigger's kind of The tab plate feels a little rough. So we're going to pull it apart. The top plate's already slid back from the vibration, but typically all you have to do is just take it and start pushing. And if it doesn't push, there's a little tab back here that you can grab and drag. Once you get it so far, I don't know how well these are going to work, but a pair of needle nose or something along that line, grab, give it some pull. it'll separate, come right off. So let's take out our screws, Phillips, start undoing these. And when we get this apart, we'll be able to see what's going on inside. It's a basic version 2. I already see one of my issues with the trigger, it looks like. I don't know if this has been apart before, if the trigger itself's broken, but I'll show you guys what I see. Right now I can see the trigger spring back here in the bottom of the gearbox. Looks like it's either out of socket or the trigger itself broke. We're going to have to look. I mean, looking at it, I'm not seeing any huge indications that the gearbox has ever been opened before. So, but if you use the proper tools and you take your time, you can typically get in and out of a gun without anybody knowing you're ever in it too. As long as you're not stripping stuff out or super torquing, anything like that. So, there's that. Take my T-handle right through the spring guide to hold the spring guide down. We're going to start separating the box. And then when you hold the T-handle, then it presses down on everything. It actually just keeps everything held in place. So we can pop it up, take it out. Yeah, see the trigger itself broke. The back of the pot metal. See if it goes better that way. You can see the back of that pot metal there. Just snapped off, so it wasn't, the trigger spring wasn't really doing anything. We're going to pull everything out of here. And then there is the piece itself. So that trigger's done. I've got spares lying around somewhere I'll be able to find and utilize. We're going to pull everything out. See the gear set. That looks good. Sector gear. Sector gear looks good. Bevel looks fine. No major issues with any of that. This is going to get pulled completely apart, scrubbed out, so it's 100% breakdown at this point. Bushings are in there pretty tight, so that's nice. Let's pry out the wire clamp. There's the clip. I just break it out. I don't care if those things are in there. We don't utilize them a ton ourselves. And then we'll do a screw for the trigger assembly. Get it out of there. Now, on the inside, let's see. It doesn't look too bad on this side at least. I'm going to take my X-Acto. What I'm going to do is I'm going to drag it. Yep, it's there. When you drag it across the metal, you'll actually feel it if there's a crack in the shell. You'll actually feel it, catch it, and stop it. Now, I don't know if this one's just an air pocket, but it doesn't seem like it is deep. Let's check this side. This side is fine. It's not really grabbing anything. And it could be just grabbing off of the way it's molded, because up top here they put a slight angle in to try and make it a little more reinforced up front. That way it doesn't break. Like I said, S&T is notorious for breaking. That one's in there good. I'm not messing with that. Get all the bushings off for now, or at least whatever's coming free on their own. And then all the shims out. There we go. That means we are good to go there. So there is the teardown, at least, of the S&T gearbox. I'm going to go scrub these down. I'm going to scrub them down, wash them, soap water, I've got a little toothbrush-esque tool, so basically a toothbrush, and I get in all the nooks and crannies to get it cleaned up, get all this old grease and dirt out of here. Piston still looks good. You know, just they super loop everything there. Do have a slight issue on the back of the cylinder that I'm gonna have to straighten out. There's a little bit of a dent. See if it'll pick it up there. There's a little bit of a dent here. It looks like that piece that broke off. But everything's going to get cleaned up here. I'm going to radius the corners of the gearbox shell while I'm in there washing it. That way any of the metal shavings go down the drain. I don't have to worry about them getting in the box. Basically all you do to radius the corners is you take a round file. This is not a file, I understand that. You take a round file and you slowly back and forth in the bottom corner here. I'm not going to do the top just because of the way the plate is up top. And it's pretty thin up here already, so I don't want to mess with it any more than I have to. We're going to leave that alone. I don't think that's going to break as much as this will down here. But basically what you're going to do is you're going to put a radius to it. It's literally about the thickness of a round file, as long as you have a small jeweler's one. And I'll show you guys when I come back what it looks like. But you put a radius in there, that way it distributes the load like an archway around the front end of the gearbox. Instead of everything being right to that corner, taking all the force from the impact of the piston head, it'll actually be radiused like an archway to a tunnel, or think anything like that, and it helps distribute that load around that arch. That way you're not getting all that stress right there. So we're going to get this scrubbed up, cleaned up, looking pretty radiused, and then we'll be back. Alright guys, so we're back. We got it all cleaned up, scrubbed up. Corners of the gearbox shell have been radiused. I don't want to lose that bushing here. So let's see if it'll catch it. As you guys can see, it's a little more rounded. I don't know if the lighting's going to play into it or not. There we go. That way it just kind of releases the stress there on the system. Now if you go to radius your gearbox, you want to make sure you go far enough into the gearbox shell itself to make sure you're getting rid of the corner. Got a replacement trigger. I think this is out of like a Seinler or JG. So we're going to dry fit it real quick just to make sure it's going to go in and it's going to work. Because if it doesn't, then we got to modify it. So we're going to put it together, just dry fit. We're going to squeeze the shell as much as possible by hand right there. Make sure everything wiggles and moves. It looks like it's going to move freely, so we should be good to go there. And we can start reassembling the gearbox here. I think the reason it actually broke is on the top half of the box there's a little stop, if you will, that's supposed to, I guess they're trying to stop the trigger from being pulled too far, and they might have just squeezed too hard to cause it to snap. So nothing too special there gearbox wise, but kind of odd. So we've got our wires set up here. Let's take a look at our wires. We're going to kind of just now, there we go. The little blue section, or I guess we would, yeah, it's blue. Is that blue?
Yeah, it's blue.
I'm red-green colorblind, guys. I'm sorry. So a little blue section, we're just going to leave. You're not going to see it. That, and I can always cover it up from the outside. We're going to strip the rest of the black off. Emma's hiding in the corner over here somewhere. She doesn't want to be on camera. She'll break the camera.
No, I didn't know what you were doing.
Alright, so we're going to put the trigger plonk back in the trigger housing here. Get it slipped in. And then when you got to put the trigger assembly back in the housing itself for the connectors, you're going to do the bottom first, slide it down, and then it'll hinge shut. Make sure your cutoff lever is out of the way, or else you're going to hit it. And then you want to make sure there's a little tab up to the top up here, right back in there, that you need to push. Make sure it's all the way down. We're going to take the screw for it. We're going to put the screw in. And we're going to get screwed down. Everything's been washed. If I don't lose the screw first, everything's been washed. Real quick, Dawn dish soap and some water. We make sure we throw the parts in front of the fan or dry them off by hand before we go to put it back in. That way you don't have no water or anything sitting on it. Wire wise, your negative is always going to go first. So you're going to put your negative in, push it down, make sure it sits all the way down into the gearbox. Your positive is going to come over top and sit down in its little slots here. You always want to make sure you push them down, and you want to make sure they're in place. We don't want to do that right now. So we're not talking to the wife right now. Sorry about that. So wires are in place. Trigger block's in place. Let's do the trigger spring. You're going to have, this is going to be your smaller of everything. I don't know. It's kind of hard to see. So there's your trigger spring. Pardon me, guys. What? Yeah. Alright. I'll just bring you home some money. Bye. So, spring. Let's get that pulled back. Send her a text real quick. She's killing me. She needs money. It's Christmas time. So that's set in place. Now, next step is going to be shimming our gears. I always start with the spur. As you can tell, you put it in there real quick. It's rubbing. We need to shim it up off the bottom. I always like to have at least one shim off the bottom of the spur, and I like to keep everything as low to the gearbox as possible. So without it wobbling, it's sitting there pretty good. We're going to hand fit the gearbox together. What's going on, Jay? Alright, so we got spur gear in there. We're going to pinch it together real quick. We're going to see how much play we have on the gear itself. See if we got a shim from the top. So, as you guys can see, or at least here maybe, there's probably a good 16th an inch travel. So we're definitely going to have to shim the top. It's not going to be able to go without a shim or two up top. So we're going to add a nice thicker shim up top here real quick. Try and eat most of that up. Now when you do this, guys, keep in mind that the best way to get the perfect shim job is to screw it together. I get it close to where I can squeeze it with my hand. I leave a little bit of play in there. So I got a little bit, just a hair. That way when I do torque everything down, it should spin freely without any wobble or anything like that. So we should be good to go there. What we're going to do is, now that we got this one set up, I'm going to pull that shim out. That way I know it's that one. We're going to grab our gear grease. This is ICS stuff. I like to throw a dab right on the bottom shaft, because don't forget, it spins inside the bushings, so there's friction. You're going to want to add some lubrication there. That way there's no friction on them. We're going to do the same thing to the top shaft. Throw our shim on there. And then we're going to progress on to the sector. Now, it's important to try and shim your gears to the bottom of the gearbox as opposed to the top of the gearbox, because you want to make sure you're hitting your cutoff lever. If you're not hitting your cutoff lever, you're not going to have semi-auto. It's just not going to happen. If it's shimmed too high and it's not hitting it correctly, you're not going to have semi-auto at all. So for now, we're going to throw a shim right on the bottom of the sector to get it up off the bearing, or off the bushing. And we're going to physically look while pressing this down to see the clearance between these two gears. It's kind of hard to tell on the camera, but what you want to do though is you want to check for physical spacing. You don't want these two gears to touch, but you don't want it to be shimmed so high that there's a huge gap there, because then you're not going to have a good portion of your gears touching. And for durability, you want as much of your gear teeth, because there's not much there. You want as much from the top to the bottom of the teeth to touch each other. That way you have more contact. More contact means more strength and reduced stress. If you only have half of those teeth engaging, so if you have, say, from here to here's your tooth, here to here's your tooth, you only have this much engaging, you're going to strip it out. But if you have the full set, it's going to grip together, you're going to have more contact surfaces, and it's going to be a lot better. So there we go, we're up a little bit, we've got a physical gap there, so it's not going to rub on the bottom. we're going to do the same thing. We're going to check the top. See how much play we got. With our finger, we're just going to... Nothing there. We have no wiggle, no wobble at all. Let's squeeze it. Still got spin. See if we can catch that on camera here. Maybe we can get a right angle. Spinning freely. So that one's good. We don't need to throw a shim up at the top. We'll be fine there. Let's go down to our bevel. And this one, I like to try and keep it up a little bit higher, because your motor height is going to be your huge factor off of shimming this. So we're going to look for the same thing. I've got a nice thick shim there to get it up off the other gear. And we're going to see how much play we have on the top of this. Now, I always like to leave a little bit of play here, just for the motor height, so it can engage tighter. If you shim too far down, your motor will never step in far enough, and you get only that little bit of touching. If you shim too far up, you're going to have it overlapping, and you're going to have another issue with it not touching right. So we got a little bit of up and down, so we're good there. When we tighten everything down, we should be fine. Let's see how these look. So these are the extras. This one's kind of thin, which is always nice, so we're going to throw those over here. Now, the top of this gear, I always like to have a shim on just to keep it off. So what we're going to do is we're going to actually back this up a little bit. So we're going to throw shim on top. We're going to take the thicker shim off the bottom, and we're going to replace it with one that's probably half the thickness, and you should be able to physically tell the various variations of the thickness there. The reason I like to keep this one shimmed down is because we don't want it to rub on top of the gearbox. Now, it shouldn't, just because of the thickness of the bushings in this setup, but you don't want to take any chances, because you can pinch it, you can strip everything, and if you try and go to cycle the gearbox without making sure everything's correct, you can strip the gears, you can ruin the motor, you can pretty much destroy everything and start over. So we should be good there. I'm squeezing, adding some pressure, still turning, top's rotating, so we're good to go. And you'll see if you're screaming there, all you need to screw it together to check it. Everything gets checked after it's screwed together again, just to make sure. Now, before we progress, little gear grease up there, gear grease down here. So those are greased right on the shafts. Same up here. Then what I like to do is we'll throw some grease and let the gears work itself in there. You don't need a ton, just enough to get in there. And you should be able to see, I don't know if you can see it, but I've got some strands working themselves in there. And we're going to do the same concept here. Throw some right down, let it carry itself all the way around and work itself into the teeth. There we go. And I like to put a little just on top, just in case it rubs at all, ever the slightest. So gears are shimmed. They'll work out perfectly when we put it together. You'll be able to see how I finish testing it and how we do it from there. Now let's find our anti-reversal latch. Anti-reversal latch, where's the spring at? Trigger spring. And I need an anti-reversal latch spring. Which I actually think I have an extra one sitting in here from earlier. I know you don't know what that is.
Why don't you tell me what you need? I have no idea what it is.
Because you don't know what it is. We'll find it here, guys. Don't worry. I pulled it off so I could clean it. And I don't know where I set it. We'll find it halfway through assembly.
Is it just a spring?
In my black Elite Force little repair boxes that are right in front of the microwave there, there's a little clear container that has little springies in it. They'll have one of these in there, and then they'll have a different type of spring in there too. I want the other type of spring.
Okay.
So we'll see how good Emma does. It was a half-assed description, but we'll see. Did it fall down? I don't know. We'll figure it out.
Microwave, right?
It's the little black case. It should be on one of the boxes right down towards the ground. So, cylinder head. Cylinder head always goes to the opposite side that the port's on. MP5 has a big port. You're going to want it to the other end. If you do it to this end, you're not going to have any compression. BBs aren't going to go anywhere. Now, you don't have to super epoxy these in. Let me see. That is what it is. Emma's found our anti-reversal latch spring replacement. So, you don't have to super seal these things. This one has the double O-ring cylinder head. So, a little bit of gear grease goes a long way. It's literally getting the O-rings wet. So, it seals. And you guys will be able to actually see how well they seal. Well, we'll see based off the piston. So, we're going to get it set in. We're going to do a dry fit. There's my anti-reversal latch. See, I told you I'd find it as soon as we started putting everything together. Dry fit. Make sure everything else is lined up there. Pull it out. We're going to throw a little bit right on the O-ring of the piston. That way it's not running dry. And you don't want a ton here. You don't need a ton. You can use other forms of grease. You just need to remember, the thicker the grease and the more viscous the grease, the slower your cycle is going to be. So there we go. We're blowing out. It's actually... Now the idea here is that when you do this, you're trying to feel the compression. So that's all the way forward. Cylinder head's not quite at the very edge, but when you're generating pressure and it's stroking, it's coming in with force and it's building compression. So when you seal this end and you start building compression, let's see if it'll do it. There we go. And I just popped the top off. Now, there we go. As you can see, I'm not all the way forward. I'm pushing. There we go. And it's sealing pretty good. So when you get everything in there, it's going to seal no issue. You're not going to have any issues, no problems like that. You're going to generate compression. You'll be fine. Ideally, if you can seal this in permanently, if you've got a good one, you can do it. So, like, I'll use a silicone caulking to try and help seal it, so no gaps or anything like that, or no air leaks through there. But 90% of the time, you're going to have air leak coming through either the air seal nozzle, or in this case, the cruddy piston heads, because the piston heads aren't that great on these, so they don't generate a ton of compression. So I'm not worried about a huge amount of compression, and it's an MP5k, so you're only going to get so much feet per second out of a spring no matter what, just because of the barrel. So that'll be good to go. Let's grab this. We're going to do a little bit around the nozzle end of the cylinder head, so we can do the air seal nozzle. Same concept. It's going to just enough to seal to make compression, so it's not leaking any air. It doesn't need to be super overdone. You don't have to have 5 pounds of grease. You don't need to super stick or glue or anything like that. It just has to work, guys. That's all it's got to do. You don't have to go overboard with it. We're going to set our tappet plate in. Now the tappet plate has a little lock-in ring on a slip joint. It slips right over the female section of the air seal nozzle. You're going to slip it in. We do a little bit of gear grease right down where the tappet plate slides back and forth. You're going to come in at an angle. So we got to get over this notch here. So drop it in, get it to line up, get it into place, and make sure everything else sits there. Let's see. I compressed it too far, guys. Alright, so it's in. Do it again just so you guys can see. I had to cut, customers came in. So we got it set up. You're going to come in, hinge, drop it in. Everything's lined up, good to go. Tappet plate spring, that's your big thicker one. You're going to do the front or the back first. I like taking a little angled needle nose, clip on the front, done. Anti-reversal latch, we're going to get pre-fit. I want to see how wobbly this thing's going to be. Maybe. Let's throw the gear in to see how much issue it's going to give me. It's going to give me a ton, of course. SRC. Or S&T, I'm sorry, S&T. Or is it SRC? These might be SRC, I don't remember. I'm going to have to ask. I don't remember what these were. There's my white lithium. So, a little tip for you guys. Sometimes it'll help you out if it's a little off. If it's a little wiggly and it's not holding its place, take a little white lithium grease. Threw it down in the hole, just enough to fill the hole. So all I did is fill the hole. You can see. Take your universal latch, stick it back in, angle it, get it set, and 90% of the time, let's see if we can get that in there, it holds. Just that little bit of white lithium grease there adds a little back pressure to it, essentially, that it kind of sucks it in and prevents it from squeezing out. So we're going to add, like I said, for this I don't overdo it, just enough to keep the cylinder walls wet. We're going to do the rails inside here. You don't want to pack a ton in, just enough. And when this stuff comes out, it comes out like bubbly. We'll see if it'll show. So it bubbles up, and then it'll actually, when you drag it, it'll start breaking the bubbles, and you can see it kind of dissipates down. So there's not as much there as it would look. And then as long as you do your middle guide, you don't have to worry about it. And you can do both sides here. Boom. I'm going to slip back in. Spring guide. We're going to get everything pre-gamed here. Now the next step is important. Clean your hands. Get off that grease, whatever you're using, because you don't want it to get onto the trigger or the trigger spring, because it's going to make your life more miserable trying to keep this locked in place if it's all greased up and ready to slide. So you're going to set your trigger spring in. Get it going. The easiest way to do this is hold the lever up here for the that cutoff for the safety. We're going to do the front of the spring first, add pressure to it, and then hinge it. Lock it back in place. It's in. Now this is going to be your bread and butter trick forever. And it's very important to pre-game everything else. So get your gearbox shell ready. Spring guides in place. Everything else is good to go. This is going to be a little bit harder because this is not a full clear through spring guide. The spring guides that let you go all the way through are great, because then you can come all the way through the spring guide with the T-handle here. You can bend it, pin it down. You can pin the spring guide down the spring plus the piston down all at the same time with one little tool. This doesn't go all the way through, so it makes it a little bit more difficult, but I like to use it anyways just because it'll help give me a little more leverage. Put it in, let it sit. It's not going to kick up past because the T-handle's here to keep it down without angling it. It's not going to angle up. From there, gearbox. Front down first. Use your index finger to press down on the cylinder. Start hinging. T-handle, or even you can press manually. Bend down. Now here comes the fun part. Sandwich. I'm sandwich hungry now. We're going to make sure our lever's out of the way. Right now it looks like our bevel is in the way just a bit. So we're going to bend our bevel back. Boom. Bevel's back. Let's see what we're hanging up on. And a reversal latch is good to go. Boom, boom. Push in on your air seal nozzle. Make sure everything's free there. We're going to make sure that nothing else. Got to get it all lined up. You want to try and do as much of this now instead of later, so you can drop it in smooth. And then we're going to push it up top. One of the gears isn't meshing in as cleanly as I would like. So let's see what we can do to get it to pop in. Now, as long as you have a solid grip on your gearbox, it frees up everything here so you can kind of wiggle and maneuver with any of the tools, anything that you have to do. You want to make sure that nothing is binding up on anything else. So, the aerosol nozzle's free. We've got something that is binding up that we need to figure out where it's binding, preventing us from closing. And based off the looks of it, it is either the anti-reversal latch, and there's the white lithium coming through from the other side that we'll clean up a little bit. And it's back here, so it's got to be the anti-reversal latch is where it's pinned. So let me see if we can get that to sit down and become at least out of the way. And all you're going to do is just work it back and forth. Whatever's out of a line, you're going to push back. We're going to find whatever's binding. So here we go. We got some pressure there. Let's take a quick look. Everything else looks lined up. So let's back it off and we're going to see. Don't be afraid to go back. If you have to go back, it lets you realign and reset everything. It's not hard to boom, pull it up, and just reset. A lot of times it's going to be something stupid and you'll figure out what it is as you're going through. But you don't want to force anything. Never force it. If you force it, you're going to have an issue. Actually, what we're going to do is we're going to back it up. I want to make sure we're not pulling on the tappet plate as we're setting this down. I think what happened on that one was the anti-reversal latch slipped under the gear and was preventing it from sitting down flush. So we're going to do it again. Everything's up, out of the way. Good to go, good to go, good to go. Front. Let's start dropping it in. Trying to do this on screen so you guys can see it while I'm actually doing it. There we go. Have to pop down. Lost the front. Make sure everything else, there we go, clicked into place. Now our anti-reversal latch should be the last piece. Drops in. Now from this point, do yourself a favor. Push on the airsoft nozzle, make sure it springs back by itself. Push on the piston, make sure it slides all the way back and forward by itself. Take the gear set, rotate it by hand. You're going to rotate it counterclockwise first to make sure it's turning freely to actually pull the piston back, and then you're going to rotate it counterclockwise to see if the anti-reversal latch is engaging. From here you're going to start putting your screws in. We're going to do this again after the screws are all in. Now I'm going to use my drill real quick, make it quicker. Get torque. Now I've got this set to 3, so it doesn't take much for the chuck to slip. So even though you hear it, it's not going anywhere. It's all inside the drill. So basic torque down. Where's my big Phillips? You see my big Phillips? I know where it went. Biggest issue with working on things is losing your tools. We're going to grab a fat Phillips, turn, turn, turn. Good to go there. Wipe everything off. That white lithium that you did in the back, if you did it, I like to take the back half of my X-Acto and a wet paper towel, clean it all off. Wipe anything extra off there so it's done. We're going to slide our brace back up top. And let's do a little hit. Where's my big one? There's my big one. Let's push it forward now. See if you guys can see. I'm just tapping forward. Now my biggest concern is I want to have this flush with the front and over the little hump, because all of our vibration and all of our impacts up front, so we want to make sure it's secure up front. See if I can find my big Phillips now, because we're going to need that. I don't know what to do with it. Emma! See if Emma can find it. 2 eyes is better than 1 eyes. See if you can find my big gray Phillips, my long Phillips. I think it's over there. Maybe. On the floor, yep. So we're going to start the reverse process here. Before you go to do anything else, like I said, do yourself a favor. Rotate your gear set. We're rotating, no issue. So we're not going to be bound up. Everything's going to be good to go. You're going to get your gun ready, your lower. Remember, this little disc goes on the left-hand side of the gun, basically, the left. Now, this is going to be a big pain in the butt if you're not used to it. I still hate it. I've done hundreds of these things. Get your wires lined up, straighten them out, while keeping the gun on its side with the disc there, so the disc doesn't fall out. You need to keep it on its side. You're going to try and line up the wires. Now, a lot of times, this is going to be your biggest issue with the MP5. You may have to pull the disc out and do the disc after you start getting your wires lined up. So mine fell out, we're going to leave it out. So we're going to do the back first. Your negative wires towards the back in this set. Positive wires towards the front. All I'm doing is just using the gearbox to help manipulate the wires itself. My wires are in. We're going to tilt the gearbox back just enough. The wires are still in place, but they're not out of the holes. That we can start setting our disc in. So our disc is in. Slide the trigger in. Get everything else locked down. Trigger should work perfect here. So now that we're in, we can set it down. Big Phillips, 2 screws. Now, magnetic Phillips, especially a long one, is going to be your best friend in these situations, just because of how far in you got to reach with the screws to be able to get done what you need done. So that's 1 screw's tight. 2nd screw, come in. 2nd screw is in and tight. There we go. Motor. There we go. Motor positive. Positive. There we go. Positive, negative. We're going to hold our negative up. Push the motor down. Be able to get the negative wire in. Push the motor down. Positive wire on. You're going to place your disc right on the center of the motor here. If you have a problem with it sliding off, put a little dab of grease or whatever, and it will actually help hold it due to the viscosity of it. So set it on, good to go. Take the motor plate, come at an angle, right over top, push down, do your 2 screws. Now, we re-shimmed everything, so we're going to make sure we adjust the motor height too. Before you go running, you know, full auto or out playing, you're going to always want to make sure, no matter what, when you take your gun apart, to check your motor height before you do anything, just so you're not ruining anything either. So there we go. Now we're going to do this kind of carefully. I think I've got a 9.6 over here. I think it's charged. I don't remember if it's charged. I don't want to use an 11.1 LiPo or anything like that, because this will break. There's my battery. There's my DIN adapter. So we're going to go plug my DIN adapter in. And just as a little bit of caution, I'm just going to slip some shrink tube over one of the connectors real quick. We'll do the negative. And this is just so I don't short the battery out if they accidentally touch or anything like that, if I'm not paying attention to it while I'm trying to adjust the motor height. I don't want it to short out, catch fire, ruin a battery, ruin the wires. etc. So we're not going to shrink it down. We're just going to slide it over and off the seal. Hook the positive up. Hook our battery up. We're going to turn this disc, and the disc is going to be representative of the actual adjuster. So you can actually push this just kind of in place for now. Slip it on. There we go. Just let it sit there. We're going to set it to semi-auto. That should be on semi-auto. Let's pull the trigger. Nope, nothing there. Hold on. Make sure my connectors are in. Nothing. Oh, Billy. Wonder if this trigger is going to work out well. Hold on. There we go. So there's our semi-auto. I had to rotate the disc the other way to get into semi-auto. It was backwards. There we go. Get it. So that should be full auto. Let's adjust. Full auto. So our disc is a little off. I think it's backwards. It's upside down. So let's manually. So there we go. That should be semi. Nothing. Boy, it doesn't like me at all, does it? All the way around again. Save. Semi. Full auto. Save. Semi. Full auto. Alright, so we're good to go there. Save. Let's back it up a little bit. So semi. And it's always awkward just because of the angle there. Alright, so we're in semi-auto. Motor height doesn't sound too bad. Let's adjust it real quick though, see what we can get out of it. If I can get the Allen key that's at least the right size for it. Try this one. That one's better. We're going to come in. You can hear the difference. Back it up, back it up, back it up. Now, just kind of turning by hand. There we go, that should be decent. Alright, so we should be good to go here. Let's throw our manual bar in through the side. Get everything lined up. So, that should be full auto. Semi. Save. Set as well. Alright, now the best way to do the ball bearing and the spring, silicone or grease in there to hold the spring in. There's our ball bearing. So spring in. Let's figure out where we're going to put the bearing. We're going to put the bearing there. So let's go right the safe. And you don't want to lose the bearing inside the gearbox. We're on save. We're on save. So there we go. Oh. Like I said, guys, this is kind of like the awkward version of how these are set up. Normally the higher end ones have them like built in, and if you have to, go to a thicker grease like the white lithium. We may end up doing that ourselves, but I'm gonna line it all up. Hopefully you guys can see this somewhat. Just be careful with that ball because it's gonna go. And these are like the biggest pains in the butt aspect about doing this stuff is getting everything lined up. So I got it in. It's there. Rotate it. Don't lose it. So it's exposed. One hand, take the little Phillips head screw. Get it lined up. Screw it in. So that should be nothing. Perfect. then you're going to wipe the excess off. Now, bear in mind, you don't want to be doing that a ton. You don't want to dry fire it a ton with it. Not having anything up front there or no back pressure. So we got that done. We're good to go there. Let's pull out the hop-up unit and check that real quick. Not really sure what that's from. Looks like they shrunk something in there. Just enough of a little O-ring to hold it in. So, hop up. Looks pretty good slide-wise. Let's look at the cleanliness of it. It's going to need a barrel cleaning. Nothing major, though. Do real quick is I'll take some silicone. This is just going to be enough of a swab to clean the inner barrel real fast. I'm not going to go through and polish it. We're not going to have a ton of accuracy off of this setup just because it is a 5K, and as you guys can see, it's not the longest barrel ever, and I'm not worried about, you know, sniper pinpoint accuracy. Just enough to get the dirt out of it to make it a little more feasible when it comes to the accuracy wise of it. I'm going to drop our hop up, and your hop up's going to go. I don't know how well you guys are going to see this. See if I can angle it. You might see that hole down there. Everything's backwards based off the camera. We're going to get that slid into the main center hole. Boom, down, in. It's in place. Now comes the fun part. We're going to line it up. We're going to slide it in. The biggest hassle with this thing, and in my opinion at least, the biggest hassle and headache I always have is the wires. Getting the wires to sit where they're supposed to. I'm going to try and do as much of this on camera as possible, but we got the wires in. They're starting to come out. Now you need to kind of work the gearbox forward and over the hump, because the back tabs are going to hit and it's going to try and stop everything there. And what you don't want is the tabs to pop out of the lower, because then you got to start over. It's and it's hard to do it on screen, guys, at the same time here. So I'm going to try my best here. We're gonna, as you can see, I'm trying to go back. It doesn't want to go back unless you angle it to get it over the hump. We're going to push the barrel back forward again. That way it's out of the way. Make sure your wires are not overlapping it. So our wires are overlapping it, so I need to adjust. There we go. We're going to push that back that side. We're going to grab our wires, pull them straight, adjust the barrel, push it forward. Let's continue to work it. And what happens, guys, there we go. You got to be careful, because what happens is it hits off the selector plate and everything else in there. Don't force it. You need to try and find the sweet spot, if you would, of where you need that thing to come through at. And here, like I said, my wire split. If you can see it, got one through here, one through here. We need both through there. So it's not really in the right location. So I'm going to try and back it out. We're going to take my long Allen key, and we're going to try and get it to line up so I can push it forward. There, I've got both pinned down. Let's push it forward. T-hit, angled needle nose. See if we can grab that bad boy. Grab and pull, grab and pull. So that's one. See if we can find that other one in there. Like I said, this is going to be, at least for me, this is always the biggest issue, is trying to get these lined up so we can actually get the wires through. I think it's a tease move too that they have these extra slots that you can see how close it is, and it's a pain. It is a royal pain. And a lot of times you got to back it up and start it over. Let's come up here. Let's straighten this one out. See if we can get this to go this time. And you're doing it off of something for like me. I don't have small fingers, so when I do this, the best way to try and do them is if you can get them all to line up, use your fingers to help guide it forward. But like I said, I don't have small fingers. Can't really go, oh, let me get my baby fingers in there, and so it can take a minute or two. And then once you get it, and we're both through the right side now, you need to, while you're pushing it, you need to feed it and work everything as well. There we go. There, I've got it lined up, slid forward. I'm going to throw a body pin up front. That way it holds it. Sorry that wasn't all on screen as smoothly as I would have liked it, but that bitch is a pain, and it's something I don't like doing a ton. We're going to throw our rear sling plate on. We're going to throw the body pins in the same side. There we go. Now, here's our battery connectors. Where's mine? We're going to cut the rest of this off. Like I said, it's important that, you know, if you do pull this apart, life's going to be easier if you don't have all this extra shit hanging off of it. But it's also, it needs to be replaced. I'd say get it at your local Radio Shack, but all of the Radio Shacks up here for us are no longer here. And I end up getting mine off of eBay. It's just cheaper that way. And I'm getting my phone! Hooray! Make Emma do stuff since she's here. Over by my checkout PC.
748-13347.
Oh, Emma took too long. Sorry if you called. Emma took too long. Blame Emma.
Oh. It's your phone.
It's Emma's fault.
It's your phone.
It's Emma's fault.
I read the number. You didn't say you recognized it. So.
Oh, we don't recognize any of them. Alright, so we're going to do our first piece of shrink tube. We're going to put one through first. And I'm trying to keep it just small enough. That way it's a decent fit. So there's that one. And the only purpose of this shrink tube here is to cover up the odd color one, which we could have replaced, but I wasn't going that far out of it. Let's find out the torch lighter. I think I dropped it. Yep, I did. I dropped it. So everything's plastic here, so make sure you do the heat away from the plastic. So just enough of a heat that it covers it and wraps and shrinks. And see, smallest piece we can get away with. That one's not going to work. Let's go to the next size. There's one. There's my negative. Not those. This one should work perfect for my negative. Yep. Let's find one for my positive. My positive. There's a positive one. There we go. Now let's get this pushed in. Pushed in. Slide them up and over. 1, 2. Get them about even height because my OCD says they need to be about even. There we go. Do that side and let's hit this side. Alright guys, so there it is. We've got that all good to go. It's all been rebuilt. Pretty straightforward process once you get the hang of it. We do have a little mid cap here. Let's throw some. Had some 2.0s. There's some 2.0s. Let's throw some 2.0s in here. We're going to cycle it real quick. Maybe we can shoot Emma. 90 round mid cap. always give your mid cap a nice tap. Click it in. BBs, heard the BBs pop up like they slid into place. We're going to plug it in. Then we're going to shoot Emma. I'm going to shoot you. I shot Emma. So, we're good to go. She said it hurts. Let's chrono it. I think there's 2 O's in this thing. 314 with a 2-0, it looks like. Let's send some rounds through, because I had some BBs in there. Open the door up. Open the door up. You're going to break the glass. Open it up. Feeding perfect. Alright, let's chrono it with halfway through the mag. 315. 316. 310. 311. So we're about we'll say 310 to 317 feet per second with a 2.0. I'm going to send the rest of the mag down range real quick so we can empty it out. Oh my, it's only 300 feet per second. Shut up, sissy. See if we can get this on camera a little bit. There we go. Reset the piston. Good to go, guys. So that's S&T or, well, that's RC. I don't remember who does this one. I think it's S&T. TAR 21 rebuild. I'm going to throw some zip ties on here to get the wires into place where they need to be. But good to go. Shooting great. Shooting pretty good for what it should be. No complaints from me. Emma says it hurts.
It does.
It's only 310 feet per second with a 2.0. We shoot it harder. My sniper rifle sits at 595 with a 2.0. 495 with a 3.2, and she's been shot up close with that thing. We don't play bang bang.
That hurt.
When we do our little local backyard, we don't play, so I shoot her with that. She's a sissy, so don't feel bad for her.
I don't cry or complain when you hit me.
Abuse, it's on camera, guys. If you guys have any questions, concerns, comments, or if you have one of these and you're having issues, leave a message down below. If this helped you out, give us a thumbs up. If you want to see Emma get shot in the future, give us a thumbs up. She's so abusive. This is why she gets shot. As always, if you could like, comment, share, subscribe, we'd greatly appreciate it.